There's millions of people out there looking at the television and listening to every single word we say.
The Honeymooners, when laughter left the room. In the dim light of a cramped Brooklyn apartment, with peeling wallpaper and a stove that barely worked, four voices echoed across generations. Ralph, Alice, Ed, and Trixie. They bickered, they dreamed, they failed, they tried again. And America fell in love with their struggles. The Honeymooners wasn't just a sitcom, it was a mirror. It showed working-class couples not as caricatures, but as people trapped between paycheck and pride, between laughter and loss. It only lasted 39 episodes, yet it lived forever. But behind the wisecracks and slapstick, the real stories were darker, more fragile. The Great One himself, Jackie Gleason, ruled the stage but feared rehearsal. Audrey Meadows had to make herself look worse to be hired. Art Carney walked with a limp he earned in Normandy. Joyce Randolph became so identified with Trixie that it quietly ended her career. One by one, they disappeared from the spotlight until there were no Honeymooners left. So what happened to them? How did they live? How did they fall? How did they die? What secrets linger behind those iconic laughs? If you believe old sitcoms held more truth than comedy, and that every laugh track hides a real-life shadow, then subscribe to this channel. Because here, we remember not just how they lived, but what they left behind. Jackie Gleason, Ralph Cramden. He called himself the Great One, and for once in showbiz, the ego matched the impact. Jackie Gleason wasn't just the star of the Honeymooners. He was its engine, its architect, its storm. From the moment Ralph Cramden stomped into that tiny Brooklyn apartment, red-faced and full of schemes, America laughed and saw themselves in him. But behind the booming voice and larger-than-life presence was a man haunted by abandonment, fame, and the demons that no spotlight could silence. Gleason grew up in Brooklyn, raised by an overprotective mother after his father disappeared without a trace. He dropped out of school early, drifted through the fringes of show business, and learned fast that the world only remembers the loudest man in the room. So he became louder than anyone else. From carnivals to clubs, from vaudeville to variety, he clawed his way into Hollywood with nothing but charm, fearlessness, and an instinct for control. By the time CBS handed him The Honeymooners, he had already crafted the world of Ralph Cramden through years of live sketches. The bus driver with big dreams and a short fuse wasn't a character. It was Jackie with the volume turned up. But Gleason hated rehearsal. He insisted on spontaneity, drove his cast and crew mad, yet demanded credit for entire productions supervised by Jackie Gleason. And somehow it worked. The 39 classic episodes became legendary, partly because they were raw, imperfect, and alive. Gleason's Ralph wasn't just funny, he was tragic. Always one step away from success, always shouting to drown out failure. Off camera, Gleason drank heavily, married 3 times, and chased fame with the same desperation Ralph chased get-rich-quick schemes. He recorded best-selling music albums, appeared in films, and became a cultural monolith. But when cancer came for him in his Florida mansion in 1987, he faced it quietly. The man who had filled living rooms with noise slipped away without spectacle. On his tombstone in Miami, just one line is engraved. And away we go. A final laugh. A final exit. Curtain down. Audrey Meadows, Alice Cramden. She wasn't supposed to be Alice. At least not in Jackie Gleason's eyes. When Audrey Meadows first auditioned, he took one look and dismissed her. Too glamorous, too pretty, too polished to be the wife of a loudmouth Brooklyn bus driver. But Audrey wasn't just an actress. She was a tactician. She went home, scrubbed off the makeup, threw on some drab clothes, and had herself photographed looking like a woman who'd been through too many long days and too many short paychecks. Gleason didn't even recognize her. He pointed at the photo and said, "That's Alice. Hire her." And when he found out it was her, he knew he'd underestimated the smartest woman in the room. Audrey Meadows made Alice Cramden more than just a sitcom wife. She was strength in stillness, sarcasm with a soul. While Ralph blustered, Alice cut him down with one look, and America loved her for it. But behind the wit was a woman who had played the game better than anyone. She was the only cast member to negotiate rerun royalties, a move guided by her brother, a sharp attorney. while the others moved on with empty pockets. Audrey cashed syndication checks for decades. Born in New York, raised partly in China by missionary parents, she didn't just act, she adapted. From Broadway to the Bob and Ray Show, to the front lines of Gleason's empire, she knew how to survive in a world that chewed up actresses and spat them out the moment they turned 30. After the Honeymooners, she found modest success in film and TV, but nothing ever matched the impact of Alice. And maybe that was fine with her. Audrey never chased the spotlight. She just knew how to own it when it found her. When she died of lung cancer in 1996, she left behind no scandals, no regrets, and no apologies. Just a single, indelible role, and a generation of women who saw in Alice Cramden a kind of quiet defiance they'd never seen before on television. Art Carney, Ed Norton. He walked with a limp for most of his life, but Art Carney never let it slow him down. The limp came from Normandy, shrapnel in the leg during World War II, a wound he carried quietly even as he made the world laugh. On screen, he was Ed Norton, the cheerful sewer worker with a goofy grin and a heart of gold. But off-screen, Carney was a loner, a worrier, a man who often felt trapped by the very role that made him a legend. He met Jackie Gleason in 1950 on Cavalcade of Stars, and the chemistry was instant. Where Gleason exploded, Carney absorbed. Where Ralph Cramden blustered, Ed Norton bumbled. And together, they created a rhythm so natural it felt like breathing. But Carney didn't just play a sidekick, he elevated the entire show. Gleason himself once admitted that Carney was 90% of the success of the Honeymooners. Yet fame wasn't kind to Carney. After the show ended, his career lost momentum. He fell into depression, battled addiction to alcohol and pills, and suffered a breakdown after his first marriage collapsed. But then came a second act no one expected. In 1974, at age 55, he starred in Harry and Tonto as a lonely widower traveling across America with his cat, and won the Academy Award for Best Actor, beating out the likes of Al Pacino and Jack Nicholson. It was the kind of quiet triumph Norton himself would have smiled at. Carney worked sporadically after that, some films, some TV, even the Star Wars holiday special. But by the late 80s, he had mostly disappeared from the public eye. When he died in 2003 at home in Connecticut, the headlines remembered the laughs, but few recalled the scars. Art Carney didn't chase celebrity. He endured it. And through it all, he never stopped being the man who made even the dirtiest job in New York feel like a dance worth doing. Joyce Randolph, Trixie Norton. She was the quiet one, the reserved one, the steadying hand in a room full of chaos. But Joyce Randolph knew exactly what she was doing. As Trixie Norton, wife to Ed and confidant to Alice, she brought warmth, wit, and the kind of dignity that doesn't shout to be noticed. She didn't get as many lines or as much screen time, but her presence grounded the Honeymooners. She was the calm in the storm, and maybe that's why audiences never forgot her. Randolph's journey to television royalty was as unlikely as it was poetic. Born Joyce Sorolla in Detroit, she started on stage and landed in New York without an agent, hustling for roles in Broadway plays and variety hours. Her big break came through a Clorox gum commercial. Jackie Gleason saw it, liked her, and brought her into his televised universe. No formal audition, no power play, just presence. But that presence came with a price. After the Honeymooners, casting directors refused to see her as anything other than Trixie. She wasn't typecast, she was trapped. Rather than fight it, she chose another path. She left the spotlight to raise her family, to live a life outside the manic glare of television. And yet, for decades, her legacy lingered. In bars across Manhattan, in letters from strangers, in college kids asking her son, "Is your mom really Trixie?" She lived to be 99, the last surviving member of the original cast. When she passed away in January 2024 at her Manhattan home, it wasn't just the end of a life. It was the closing of an era. The last living tie to a show that had once captured America's working-class heartbeat had finally gone silent. But Joyce Randolph was never just the last one left. She was the woman who made Trixie real, and in doing so, made the Honeymooners whole. They were only together for 39 episodes. No elaborate arcs, no extended seasons, no sweeping finales. Just a one-bedroom apartment, a two-burner stove, and four voices that echoed through decades. The Honeymooners wasn't built to last, and yet, somehow, it did. It lived on in reruns, in catchphrases, in the way we saw ourselves reflected in the rants, the eye rolls, the unspoken tenderness beneath all that shouting. Jackie Gleason burned like a comet, dazzling and unpredictable, always on the edge of collapse. Audrey Meadows was razor-sharp behind the apron, turning rejection into the role of a lifetime. Art Carney limped from Normandy into television history, turning sidekick into soul. And Joyce Randolph, the final heartbeat of the ensemble, outlived them all, quietly dignified, never seeking more than what she had already given. What made the Honeymooners immortal wasn't the writing or the timing, though both were brilliant. It was the truth. The raw, unpolished, often uncomfortable truth about marriage, money, friendship, and failure. They were dreamers in dead-end jobs. They loved hard and shouted louder. They lived paycheck to paycheck, argument to argument, moment to moment. And even in black and white, they felt more real than the high-definition fantasies we're sold today. Now, with all foregone, the laughter feels quieter, but it also feels sacred. Because behind every bang, zoom, and every exasperated glance, there was a human story, flawed, funny, and unforgettable. If these stories moved you, if these voices still echo somewhere deep in your memory, then subscribe to this channel. There are more tales waiting, more faces in the dark, more legends behind the curtain. Let's keep their memories alive, not just as actors, but as the very soul of television's golden age.